starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m.
We go on to declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest? I'll do it by exception for that one. No? No one has any? So we have the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of April. And Leanne, you have a correction?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll just share that to the screen for everyone to see. It's just showing that Councillor Gibson opened the meeting at 1:05 p.m. and then you assumed the chair after attendance had been called.
Happy to move, Mayor. Deputy Danny Gibson.
Happy to second, Mayor. Hugh McKenzie.
Mayor, just checking, we're having some trouble hearing you. In fact, we can't hear you at all.
You might have to assume responsibility again, Deputy Mayor.
How's that? Is that better?
That's far better.
No, there's a button here that keeps I lean against, apparently. That's what the problem is. So. Okay, we've been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? So the ayes have it, that is carried. No deputations, no petitions, no community reports, public questions on notice are there from the previous meeting, and then public questions for this meeting. We have Leanne, I think, is going to read them out.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have 3 questions from Ron Baines of Kings Meadows. Question 1. Has Council made any decision regarding huge loss of recycling material at the main tip face, usually called the truck face?
Yeah, I'll answer that. The salvaging directly from the landfill face is no longer permitted due to the health and safety risk and operational delays. The Council has made many recent advances in recovering recyclable material and achieving increased landfill diversion. The Council is proactive in providing recycling opportunities prior to landfill, such as e-waste, cardboard, paint, scrap metal, white goods, tyres, polystyrene tyres, mattresses, batteries, fluoro tubes, recovery of recyclable items and building materials via Uptipity, the resale shop, organic material via FOGO, and recovering resale and recycling material from the walking floor, which operates at the Launceston Waste Centre. The Council's annual hard waste collection achieves a 65% recovery of all items collected. The City of Launceston is also a member of the Northern Tasmanian Waste Management Group, which has a charter to provide education, funding, awareness and advocacy to achieve more sustainable waste management for Northern Tasmania. Construction and demolition recovery is the next best opportunity for landfill diversion after organics, and a number of projects are in place to build a business case towards this for the region. The main one being an audit from 3 building sites to understand what proposition of waste from a typical building site is recoverable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Question 2 from Mr Baines is, with regard to the new Auto Museum, has UTAS purchased the freehold to enable the transfer to City of Launceston and registered the sale with the Titles Office?
Thank you. This matter has been previously answered by Council. The site on which the National Automobile Museum of Tasmania, the NAMT, is located is part of the land transfer agreement between the Council and the University of Tasmania. The transfer agreement is now in the final stages of completion, and therefore the NAMT site will be transferred into Council ownership in the near future.
Thank you, Mayor. Question 3 from Mr Baines is, due to COVID-19, the Council will have a shortfall in rates payments. Will Council need to borrow in order to cover this loss of income?
Thank you. It is likely that the Council will access some of the interest-free loan funding which has been made available by the Tasmanian Government as part of the COVID-19 pandemic response. The Tasmanian Government has made $150 million of interest-free funding available to the Tasmanian local government sector to assist councils and their communities to recover from the pandemic. And then, thanks, Leanne.
Thank you, Mayor. The next 3 questions are from Ray Norman of Trevelyan. Question 1. Given that it is the role of governance, Council's elected representatives, to determine policy and strategic direction, with management's role being to implement governance's determinations, it is now very clear that what once pertained relative to policy development and appropriate strategic imperatives are no longer relevant in the way they were assumed to be a few months ago. In acknowledgement of changed and changing circumstances, will Council proactively acknowledge these changed and changing circumstances in developing policies and initiating strategic directions looking forward? Consistent with that, will Council initiate citizens' assemblies as a means of garnering expert advice directly and indirectly, thus enabling broad spectrum community engagement in policy development and strategic determinations? And consistent with that, empanel a citizens' assembly facilitated by, say, the New Democracy Foundation or a like arm's length organisation to complete the cultural strategy process in order to develop a truly 21st century outcome that best fits the municipality's multidimensional and multifaceted cultural realities, needs and aspirations.
Thank you. The response is, at this stage, it is not intended to consider the introduction of the citizenship assemblies as part of the Council's community engagement approach. Over the last 12 months, the Council has implemented the Tomorrow Together program, which represents a new way for councils to engage with their community. Through this program, Council has changed the way it engages with the Launceston community. Rather than asking for feedback on each individual project, we have been asking our community upfront what is important to them and asking them to work with us on the solutions. Some conversations, however, need to be bigger and bolder. For those complex, big picture or strategic conversations, we need to have There Is Now, Tomorrow Together. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Mayor. This is question 2 from Mr. Norman. Given that there is serious concern within the community in regard to Council's apparent lack of transparency relative to its recent grant initiative and the apparent discretionary accountability on display, will Council commission a forensic audit to be undertaken at arm's length from the Council's management, with the auditor being appointed and briefed by either the Minister of Local Government or his nominee?
Thank you. This matter will be considered by the Council later in the agenda today. However, should the Council agree to conduct an independent audit in respect to the grant process, it will not involve the Minister for Local Government. Thank you. Leanne?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Norman's question 3. Given that Council has declared a climate emergency and the municipality is facing dire economic circumstances, will Council proactively seek to encourage the establishment of local resource recovery enterprises and, consistent with that, adopt a no food waste disposal protocol within the municipality and, consistent with that, change the signage at the Waste Management Centre to read Resource Recovery Facility?
Thank you. The Council will soon be conducting a round of circular economy grants as part of their community care and recovery package, which will encourage the establishment of local resource recovery enterprises. At this stage, there is no plan to adopt a no food waste disposal protocol for the municipal area, nor is there any plan to change the name of the Launceston Waste Centre and Transfer Station. It should be noted that in addition to the transfer station, this facility includes a recycling centre, a second-hand shop called Uptivity, a green waste disposal area, as well as an organics processing centre. The Council is also a member of the Northern Tasmanian Waste Management Group, which conducts the Rethink Waste program, which encourages our community to rethink what we do with our waste to improve our collective efforts to reduce, reuse and recycle. Council adopted a sustainable strategy in 2019 to support our declared climate emergency. The strategy documents Council priorities for now and our future. Thanks,
Thank
Leanne.
you, Mayor. These next questions are from Robin Smith of Launceston. Question 1. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Launceston Council continues daily leaf blowing of public streets and footpaths in Launceston CBD. Street sweeping by the use of multiple backpack petrol-powered air blowers is highly unfortunate for those who walk through the city while the airborne particles remain suspended for hours. I note that the council operators themselves do not wear any protective breathing apparatus or hearing protection. There is reporting that viruses can be rendered airborne and breathed in by the public. Given the length of time particles can be seen suspended in the air following the passing of the council team, to protect the elderly and immunocompromised, would council consider suspending this practice during, at the very least, the pandemic?
Thank you. Removing of leaf litter and debris with blowers is undertaken daily in the CBD between 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. by blowing the litter into the curb, which is then removed with the street sweeper. Employees undertaking this activity operate within our standard operating procedures, which have been designed to mitigate health and safety risks. The PPE worn by staff is appropriate for this task. We do not believe and have found no evidence to support that COVID-19 will be spread through this activity. This activity is undertaken to maintain the amenity of our CBD, minimise leaf litter and debris entering the stormwater system. This time of year, leaf litter in the drainage system can lead to blockage of pits and pipes, which results in flooding, and also to remove slip risks from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is question 2 and question 3 from Mr. Smith. There are a number of rough sleepers living on the streets of Launceston who appear not to be sufficiently accommodated during the pandemic. There are people sleeping under the bridge, in a city car park, in a car in the Gorge car park, and even a person who is completing a period of 14-day pandemic isolation while living in a tent in the Gorge Reserve Council property. Can they be helped further by council, please? And the next question is, there is also the matter of a South Korean tourist who has been living rough in the city centre in excess of 10 months now. His return air ticket has expired and apparently does not possess the financial means to return to his native country. He is now facing his second winter living in the open. He is too unassuming to ask for help, not eligible for most, and appears to be trapped in somewhat of a state of limbo. In a previous council meeting, 5 or 6 months ago perhaps, I raised this matter and coincidentally indicated the adjacent council grounds behind the very meeting building where he still lives. Can he be helped by council, please?
Thank you. Yes, we can certainly inform the relevant partner agencies to see if they are able to provide support to the people Mr. Smith has identified, which we continually do and have been doing. But also, we'd all be aware now that the state government has made some significant changes with the City Mission and the Salvation Army in particular to open up a day centre in our city in the coming weeks. And the day centre will also have a place where people can sleep. So it's going to be a day and night centre, 24 hours. It will be supervised and will provide a safe place for any homeless person in our city. I think this is a very positive initiative, and I thank the state government for that, and it's something I know Michael and I have been working with the state government on to try and improve the facilities for homeless in our city, and we can see that should be happening in the next few months or weeks. That's a lot of questions, I think, Leanne, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That's the end of public questions.
Thank you. There's no development applications for this agenda. No announcements by myself. Announcements by councillor reports. Deputy Mayor?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay?
Thank you, Mayor. There was announced late today the departure of Neil Grove, the Executive Officer of the Chamber of Commerce. I just thought it would be appropriate today for the City of Launceston to recognise the great service that he's provided to business and industry in Launceston and Tasmania in that role over the past 3 years. He's definitely been a great partner, the Chamber of Commerce, through his leadership with the City of Launceston, directed and keeping us on track when required, but also an advocate for the things that are happening in the City of Launceston and particularly around the city deal. So I think his past 3 years in that role would appropriately be acknowledged today, and looking forward to the contributions that continues to make to the region.
Thanks for that, Councillor Finlay. I have we've done a media today on that, thanking him and acknowledging that. We're also going to write to him, then offer a time for him to come in to have a drink when it's appropriate into the near future.
Fantastic.
Councillor McKenzie?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I just on similar vein, just noting that Mr. Paul Hodgson from the Launceston Airport finishes up today, and I'd just like to acknowledge the Mayor's comments to him yesterday in regards to the great service he's made to the city through his role as General Manager at the airport, but moreover the many other things that he's contributed in and around our community, being on the Tourism Northern Tasmania Board, also the Chamber of Commerce and a number of other sort of bodies around the city. So just acknowledging the great work that Paul has done for this community and noting that he will be sadly missed.
Thank you. I agree. Councillor Soward?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cox?
No, thank you, Mayor. Only to endorse the comments about Paul Hodgson.
Thank you. Councillor Stojanczyk?
I don't have anything, but I forgot to declare a declaration of interest in item 15.1 earlier. Sorry.
Thank you. 15.1. You certainly can. It's noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dawkins?
Yes, please. Just like to acknowledge that Junction's been postponed this year, as I'm assuming we all thought it would, but obviously being a big year for Junction because it would have been their 10th anniversary since the very first regional arts conference in Launceston, which was the springboard for Junction. So we look forward to 2021, the postponement and the big event that it will be, but also to acknowledge that Junction are going to attempt to curate an end of ISO Life festival using some of the artists in our community who have had events cancelled. So let's hope that's prior to the end of the year, and we can all look forward to an event where people who've missed out over the months can all come together and enjoy.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Dakin?
Just like to acknowledge the great contribution that Neil Gross has made to the city in his role over the years. So thank you, Neil, and all the best in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer? Councillor Spencer, you there? Councillor Harris?
Thank you. No, nothing to report other than, as the others have done, to acknowledge the great work of both Neil and Paul in the city life. I will have a question without notice when you go back through them.
No worries, thank you. Councillor Walker?
No, nothing to report, Mayor.
Councillor Spencer, you there? I assume he's got nothing, but should never assume, I tell my kids. So. Councillor Spencer? No, okay, we'll move on. I just want to add too that tomorrow night BOFA has their unofficial launch party, which they're having on air, which would be great for those that can get into it. And that's happening tomorrow night. And we thank BOFA for still putting the free films on over the next 3 weeks or so, which is great. We'll move on to questions by councillors. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question which further expands on some of your comments with regard to homelessness. As you said, the provision at the City Mission here in Launceston with regard to the 16 dormitory beds, meals, showers, laundry, lockers and charging stations and network access is a welcomed addition in our city. I just wonder if at an opportunity that presents soon, we could have an integrated update with regard to the work that all of those working in that space under the leadership of our council's staff could provide, because there were a number of initiatives that were going to be in progress, and obviously this $4 million shelter and homelessness solution, whilst not permanent accommodation but still being able to be accessed 24/7 is very welcomed. It will be an opportune time to examine where we're at with regards to a variety of things that are in train.
Thank you. That'll be noted and taken on notice. Thank you.
Well, Mayor, I can answer that.
Yep.
So you will receive the agenda for our first COVID-19 workshop, or in the pandemic period, next Thursday. So it's actually included on that workshop agenda to provide exactly what the Deputy Mayor is asking. So.
Oh, well done. You're ahead of the game.
That's wonderful. Thanks.
Councillor Finlay?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie?
Just two or three things. Just speaking to Freestyle FX Signs during the week and noting that they are actually, I think, to bring out some new stickers, which I think they were the actual people that put those "We're Open" stickers that are around the city. They've just noted that they're actually about to bring out some stickers which say "We're back" for those businesses that have ceased. Have shut and are now reopening again. And just speaking to the owner of the property, and said that they'd be happy if council were comfortable to be a repository for some of that signage, just in case somebody's looking for them. So I'm just wondering if that's possible. If the general manager can advise whether that's possible.
The CEO, Michael.
Just CEO. Still struggling with that. Sorry, Michael.
It is certainly possible, and if you could put them in contact with our customer service people, that'd be the way to go.
Okay. Second question was in regards to the fragrance DA. I just note from what I'm reading in the paper that there have been significant number of submissions in relation to that particular DA, and I think it's coming to council on or about the 14th of May. I'm just wondering whether, just given the significant amount of information that's going to be circulated in regards to that, whether there was any opportunity for the councillors to get the recommendations from council officers, which I appreciate may not have been made at this stage, any earlier than we normally do, because I suspect there's a significant amount of reading, and to do justice to the representations that are made, to give opportunities for councillors to make sure they do their due diligence well ahead of the meeting.
CEO?
Yeah, it is certainly possible to provide the material, the background in particular, but I know that the planning team are still working on the report, so that's not yet complete. But look, we'll make every endeavour to provide it as early as we can, and it's not unprecedented when there are big developments like this with a lot of background reading to get that to councillors earlier, so we'll do that.
And just my final question was just in regards to a response you made to, I think, Mr. Baines, or I think his question on notice. Am I understanding that the recycling area isn't open at this stage and neither is Activity? So therefore our ability for any of the public which are now able to go into there are not able to use that. So as a consequence of that, is there likely that there is more sort of recyclable material hitting the tip face than normal?
Oh, well, so yeah, you obviously it's still it's closed, but the walking floor for the transfer station is still being serviced, and anything as we ordinarily do that our staff identify that is salvageable, they do. So there may be a little bit more that they're pulling out at the moment. I haven't checked, but I would expect that's what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Soward?
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stojanczyk?
No, thank you.
Councillor Dawkins?
No thanks.
Councillor Daking?
No, thanks.
Councillor Spencer? Is he back with us? Councillor Spencer?
He's still on mute, Mayor.
Well, you must be able to hear me, though. The rest of you can hear me, so... Councillor Spencer, can you unmute yourself if you want to speak?
You there?
Yes.
You there? Right.
Yeah. Any question?
I agree entirely with you. This project is going to be massive, and I think we need a bit of time to go through all that.
Well, you've had your answer.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No.
No further questions?
No, thanks.
Councillor Harris?
Yeah, just talking about the waste centre, I was just wondering how the reopening went and whether in fact there were any issues with long lines or something like that might have caused the issue, because it had been shut for more than a month or so. Anyone able to answer that one?
We'll see you.
Yeah, I can answer that, Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Shane.
Of course, Saturday was we had some wet weather, so attendance was significantly down. Sunday attendance was probably half that of an average weekend. Average wait times were in the order of 10 to 15 minutes.
What about since then? It's been pretty good?
So, yeah, during the week, the numbers are still significantly down.
Okay, thank you.
There still seems to be some, I guess, people not knowing that it's open, and I'm just wondering if there's any plans to do anything to re-advertise the fact that we have opened the tip for people, even if there isn't going to be the activity recycling going on and that sort of thing.
We can advertise again on social media, that's fine.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thanks.
Councillor Walker?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That's a lot of that. Then we move on to 14.1, Council Workshop Report. Somebody happy to move that?
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay, seconded.
Happy to second, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Finlay?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Deputy?
No, thanks.
Any councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. We'll just go, hopefully it works.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Then we move on to 15.1. Notice a motion from Councillor Walker.
Happy to move that motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Walker, you wish to speak?
Yes, I do wish to speak to the motion, Mayor. I just have to bear with me, and I apologise for not having my video on, but I am, just as way of explanation, sort of doing it all on one device today. I wasn't able to get the meeting onto my desktop computer. But having said that, I've moved this motion, I rise to move this motion as we would normally, with a certain amount of mixed feelings. There's no doubt Launceston City Council has moved quickly to provide a suite of assistance to to the community, including these innovation grants. But in a time when businesses are suffering, we have to be doubly sure that we target those with the greatest need and deliver money where it can provide the greatest benefit. Raising expectations as we did in the community and then almost immediately in comparison closing the round is always going to be a recipe for extreme disappointment, regardless of the well-intentioned genesis that this innovation grant had. And as councillors, we're not privy to the details surrounding the application and the awarding of these grants. When questions are asked and significant angst has been expressed across the community, there's cause for councillors to be answerable to that process that we all voted to support. And there's cause for councillors to be involved in seeking those answers through probity and transparency. And there's also, of course, cause for councillors to see that those details are publicly available. This is core council business for us to be accountable for the spending of public money. And of course, we've seen the overwhelming demand for assistance. That was to be expected, especially during these times. No one questions that demand, and no one questions the potential benefits that would come from such a scheme. But grant schemes like this must meet a high level of fairness, both opportunity and accountability. And the questions that have been asked of council by the community are reasonable, given the unusual nature of this scheme. Sorry, I don't, wish to sort of go on about it too much, but obviously I think it's important that we have this audit and get clarity around the issue for the sake of the council as much as the sake of the community. I commend this motion to the council.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Mayor, I'm happy to support the motion. I just wanted to make some comments in relation to it. We are in unprecedented times, and I think that we've come under a significant amount of scrutiny for an innovation that I think was needed and wanted by the community. We acted quicker than any other council in the state and probably most in the country in regards to the packages that we put forward. One of the things that when I first joined council was people complained about the amount of red tape, red and green tape that was put across everything that we did. This is one of those ones where we've actually tried to remove the red tape, and now we've been criticised for not having enough red tape. So I accept that. I think the number of concerns that have been raised in the community, I think have been done, a lot of that's been done on innuendo and hearsay. But having said that, they deserve a response in relation to that and to make sure that our processes are being done appropriately and accurately. I also note that in the federal government, with a number of the initiatives that they've got out and around in COVID, they haven't been perfect either. Things like JobKeeper, where the Treasurer's needed to come out and make amendments to JobKeeper in relation to people who missed out because they didn't quite fit the definition. So we are dealing in unprecedented times, and I think the community needs to take on board the fact that we have gone out with all the good intentions to do things the right way and to help businesses, and I think that's why it's important that there are a number of things, and I note there's possibly an amended motion coming up. I did make some comments in regards to the amended motion because I think this original motion says include but not limited to. So include but not limited to means that we can add to the detail that's required in the audit. And my assessment of what we need to do from here, assuming this motion or the amended motion, if it gets up, is to go away and work up the terms of reference that we would put towards an auditor. And I guess we as a council sign off on the terms of reference that are required, and they may include more than what's on the list that's here, and it may include more than what's on the list that comes out in the amended motion, should that come to the table today. And at that point in time, we as a council can sign off on that and then leave the CEO to do his job, which is to then go out and enact the requirements of the council, and then to come back and issue the report through the auditor at the end of it. But I think that just given the number of comments that have been made in and around the community, that an independent audit of the nature that's been put forward in this motion is appropriate. Also noting that it is probably going to cost in the order of $30,000 to $40,000 of council money to do this, which could I guess anecdotally be used for some other projects in relation to the innovation projects as they are. But I propose to support this or any amended motion which is along the lines of the similar thing.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to test an amended motion. I'm happy to read it out. It has been provided, essentially just expanding upon the words of Councillor Walker to, I guess, direct the CEO and the staff to more comprehensively consider not only the administration processes undertaken, but importantly the on-the-ground impact that funds for the grants that have been awarded thus far, and indeed those in the circular economy stream to come, have made on our community.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay, is it? Yep.
Yes.
Just checking. So moved, Deputy Mayor, second to Councillor Finlay. You wish to speak to it, Deputy Mayor?
Look, essentially, I think the opportunity to really unpack not only the administrative processes, but indeed the impact that these grants and the ones that are to come will have had on our community, is really important. And the opportunity not only to scrutinise the process, but what we've received, bang for buck, is really, really important. So certainly not criticising the words of the original mover, but just further unpacking what it is that we're asking the CEO to do by expanding on those points and by adding to it in a more wholesome way.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay, wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think it's really important, firstly, to acknowledge the notice of motion that's been tabled by Councillor Walker. We have previously, in workshop and through the week since this has been indicated, fully supported that an audit has to happen. But when we're going through the process of undertaking an audit, for its very nature, I think clarity and certainty is important. And if we're hopeful that it will be a comprehensive audit, then we should state that in the notice of motion. So I welcomed the Deputy Mayor's amendments. I think it does align with the intentions that we have, that we fully audit this element of the package, and that we provide that clarity to the CEO to engage an independent auditor and bring forward a robust report to Council. At the point of speaking to the amendment, I'm really proud, and I get the sense that we actually all are really proud of the multifaceted package that we have adopted and delivered, which was to the value of almost $9 million for our community. And in the outcome that this amendment is supported and the motion is supported, I'm really looking forward to receiving the review, which will be independent and comprehensive.
Thank you. I think the package now with the last amendments and the city prom amount of it is over 9.1 million, so it's very significant. Councillor Mackenzie, do you wish to speak to the amendment? You're muted.
Am I allowed to speak given I've already spoken on the previous
motion? Yeah, this is now the amended motion.
Again, as I said in my previous comments, I'm comfortable with either motion because both of them give the flexibility to add to it, and we still may find by the time we go to the audit process there may be other things that we need to include in the motion as far as what our terms of reference are. So I would like to see these and maybe others included in the terms of reference, but I'm happy for the CEO to take that on board and work through that and then come back, and I guess it also gives the opportunity for other councillors who may have other disquiets or concerns that they may wish to include.
Thank you. Councillor Soward.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add, I'm a bit like Councillor Mackenzie, I'm very happy to support either motion, but happy to support the amendment. I think it does what the Deputy and Councillor Finlay said, which makes a lot of sense. So I guess the only other things I want to add, Mr Mayor, to what's been said, without sounding facetious, it would have been easier if we hadn't done anything, because by doing what we've tried to do, the criticism that we've received in some instances, I understand people's frustration, our community are hurting, but in other instances where I guess I've been really disappointed, is where there have been people who've wanted to prosecute a case of what we've done on social media with no evidence, just run commentary on what we've done, whereas others have taken the right approach and written to the council, and the council has responded. So, you know, I've been very appreciative of those that have written to us, and yourself or the CEO have responded, which has been fantastic, and that's the correct way to go about these things. You know, the other thing too that I said at the last meeting when we dealt with these similar matters, we don't have a handbook that says, you know, how to deal with a pandemic COVID-19 situation, because we've never had one before. So we're learning as we go. We're doing what we're doing with good intent. And again, I guess how I'm feeling about it, Mr. Mayor, and it's a sad thing to say, but you know, we've been in a little bit of a damned if we do, damned if we don't. Had we have moved slowly, we might have our officers looking at 1,000 grant applications, you know, at the end of this month today. So I'm very happy to go through that audit process. My disappointment comes from the fact that whilst of course we need to be transparent and we need to be open, those who criticise us for wasting money will have a crack at us, I'm sure, about the cost of whatever this will be, which is further money we could have put into a package to support those in need. So obviously I'll be supporting it, but it's reluctantly insofar as where those resources go. And again, I'll just finish what I'm saying in that I do hope that those who try and prosecute their case, other than doing it through the correct channels, when this audit or investigation is undertaken, that they will take that on board and take that as the outcome, whatever that might be, rather than continue this on another social media, you know, almost like a whodunit type thing. So I'll be supporting it, but as I said, a little bit disappointed with how some have conducted themselves in their reaction to the situations we've been dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
Yeah, I'll be supporting it, Mayor. I haven't got a lot to add to Councillor Soward's comments. In fact, I'd probably endorse every one of them.
Thank you. Nothing further to add there. Councillor Dawkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would have supported Councillor Walker's motion, and I do appreciate the amount of work he's done on this. I hope it's not diluted by the broader motion from Councillor Gibson, and I don't believe it will be. I think it's important when we consider the terms of reference that a number of community members have asked for an auditor with a neutral standpoint, no existing connections to council, or that arm's length kind of idea. I think if we are to do the very best job we can here, ensuring that we have absolutely considered probity, transparency, all of the things that community members who are concerned are after, that we should consider that neutral standpoint of the auditor. I think sometimes there can be an unconscious bias brought to report writing, and I think we've all experienced it. So if we are to really do the very best we can here, I think we do need that neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dakin?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to acknowledge Councillor Walker for proactively putting his motion together. Councillor Walker did a very good job with, I would say driving it, but collectively keeping us informed and seeing this through. And I'd also like to thank the amended motion, Deputy Mayor. So I'll be fully supporting. I think, as Councillor Mackenzie said, I'm happy to support both motions, but obviously supporting the amended motion. As all of you have said, I think this shows great transparency as us as a council and an organisation. We've pushed out a fantastic initiative very quickly in obviously very, very trying circumstances. And I think bringing this audit forward shows a positive response to that positive initiative. It shows that we're a responsible council. The GM has recommended that we do this audit. I'm fully supportive of it, and I think you know, have we got it right? Well, I think we did. Could we do things better? Well, this audit will tell us if we can and what we could do better in the future. And again, I think it's fantastic to be part of the council that can move so quickly and get that money out into the community as much needed. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you hear me? Yep.
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 One thing I'm not happy about is the 30 or 40,000 it could cost, but from the concerned businesses that have raised all these questions, I think we've got to do it. I'd support Councillor Walker's. I don't know if it's possible that we can have some councillors have some input into it. But what Councillor Dawkins mentioned about a totally separate auditor is probably what we need in this case. But the 30 or 40 grand it could cost worries me, but I think we've got to do it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Just unmuting ourselves. Yeah, look, when you're at the end of the list, most things have already been said. I would support the amended motion from the Deputy Mayor to get the CEO to direct the suitable organisation, qualified organisation, to undertake the audit, and I'm sure the CEO will take on any concerns that any councillors may have, and also those that have been expressed to us from the community, and put them through the auditor. At this stage, I'd like to recognise we are going to spend $30,000 or $40,000 on this audit, but what this whole process has shown us is there is in fact a huge demand for this type of grant to enable Launceston business to uptake e-commerce. And I'd like to foreshadow a future motion based on the report that we hope we'll get back out of this, to perhaps have regular rounds of e-commerce for the business in community here in Launceston. That has, to enable them to embrace e-commerce. I think the number of businesses that have a very basic e-commerce website or even Facebook page is only just over 50%. And I think if we stand for 3 years or something similar to say we will have a program of grants to make this happen, the one thing that it will have is that the grants will have a dead timeline for people to apply by, and so therefore people will have an opportunity to put their best foot forward, and we'll be able to select the best of those, and hopefully this audit report will teach us some lessons of which ones worked and which don't. So that's just something I'll foreshadow for the future, but happy to support the current amended motion put forward by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. You can hear me?
Yes.
I certainly, was probably caught a little bit by surprise by this motion. I thank the Deputy Mayor for circulating this morning. I will say that, as much as we can be proud of the package that we've delivered, and no doubt it will have an impact on the community. Make no mistake that when, generally money is spent, there will be an impact. But it's our job to look after our community. It's our job to do that equitably. And if we're not doing it right, we need to know, and the community needs to know. That was the essence of my original motion, not to highlight the impacts, the positive impacts on the community. No doubt they'll be there. No one disagrees that they'll be there. Not the people in the community who are upset about some of the process, not councillors, and not the businesses who are successful. Nobody doubts that the aim and the intent were good, and by and large will have good effects in our community. So I'm interested to just pursue a little of some of the councillors' comments. And as far as my previous speaker, Councillor Harris, goes, I don't think that we're generally here as an arm that supports businesses by way of grants. I concede that we're in untried times, so it makes complete sense that at the moment we are lending a hand due to unprecedented impacts. But I think as a general rule, I'd be more sort of concerned about an ongoing, business support package for the council. But that's
we're not here to that's for another day.
For another time. Getting back to Councillor Mackenzie's suggestion that as councillors we should sign off perhaps on a final terms of reference. I think that's a worthy suggestion when it comes to Councillor Dawkins and Councillor Spencer agreeing that it should be a neutral and arm's length process of selecting an auditor, I also think that's a useful suggestion. So I suppose I'm looking to potentially amend the amended motion, if that's possible, at this stage, and to include those two things, that as councillors we sign off on the final terms of reference, and that the auditor selected is one that's perceived as being neutral and at arm's length from the council, i.e. probably someone who hasn't generally worked with the council before. So I'm quite happy to move that, to make that addition to the amended motion.
I'll ask the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Finlay if they're happy for that. Otherwise, we'll have to have another amendment once this motion.
Very good.
Mayor, if you will, sorry, just to clarify that obviously there's a procurement process that is needs to be conducted in accordance with our requirements, our code of practice for procurement and tendering. We can't predispose an outcome. Obviously, we're saying it's an independent external provider, but to me, we need to go through that procurement process in order to be able to determine that. And so, it's hard to predetermine that in any significant way. And the point, just in respect of the terms and reference, I have no issue, and I would be foolish as a CEO not to be taking that back to council, and don't particularly need that to be a direction provided by council, just to aid in your consideration. So
thank you.
Very
good. Anything further, Councillor Walker?
Well, in that case, no. Then I won't require Councillor Deputy Mayor or Councillor Finlay to consider that then. But if this amended motion is to be accepted, that will end the discussion on this, or do we go back to...
No, that would end the discussion.
That will end the discussion.
It'll become the motion, and then, yeah.
It'll become the motion. We've already spoken on the motion. Game, job done. In which case, I mean, obviously I supported my own motion and I put quite a lot of thought into that. I won't have the opportunity, if this amended motion is successful, to make my conclusions about...
Oh, you will. You do.
I think you still close.
Yeah, you do.
Because even if I don't support the amended motion.
Yeah, it's your motion.
If it becomes the motion, it'll become the motion, then we can do the closing.
It's still mine. In which case, I just wanted to clarify that. Yes, I'm in two minds as to whether to support the motion, because, like I say, I did wish the motion to sort of just get to the heart of the matter, and then we can move on. So, at present, I've said that all I need to. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Everybody's spoken. So, Deputy, you don't close on the amended motion, do we?
No, you just take the vote.
We take the vote. So,
Mayor, this is Leanne Purchase. Would you like me to read the amended motion for the benefit of anyone listening?
Yep, that'll be a good idea. Thank you.
So the amended motion is that the council request the Chief Executive Officer to engage a suitably qualified organisation to conduct an independent audit of the Community Care and Recovery Grants Program. This audit should include, but not necessarily be limited to, A, a review of the rationale and objectives of the programs, B, a review of the administration process for the receipt, assessment and awarding of the grants against the council-approved criteria, including an assessment of the rigour applied by council to determine the genuine need of the organisations which received grants, and an assessment of the rigour applied by council to determine creative and innovative solutions, and the costings included by the successful applicants, including clarification around the figures representing co-contribution, and C, an assessment of the actual on-the-ground impact that the grant funding has on businesses within Launceston, and D, a determination on whether the objectives of the Community Care and Recovery Grants Program were achieved.
Thank you, Leanne. So now we'll do the vote. So, Deputy Mayor?
4.
Councillor Finlay?
4.
Councillor Mackenzie?
4.
Councillor Soward?
4.
Councillor Cox?
4.
Councillor not there, sorry. Councillor Dawkins?
4.
Councillor Daking?
4.
Councillor Spencer?
4.
Councillor Harris?
4.
Councillor Walker?
It's very difficult.
No, it's not. It's a yes or no.
Oh. But I am for the amended motion. Thank you.
You're for. You're for then?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm for. So that's unanimous. So that is carried. That now becomes the motion. As their motion, I think most people have spoken. If anybody else wants to add anything at this stage? Councillor Walker, you wish to close?
I'll just wait for a sec. Is there anything else there? Nothing?
I don't think so.
No.
Everybody's had their chance. So.
Very good. I will close. Thank you, Mayor. You know, while I appreciate the efforts that the Deputy Mayor has gone to broaden the scope of the audit, as I said earlier, you know, it wasn't intended to be looking so much at the impact on the community. I think that is fairly obvious that, you know, distributing now what is around $700,000 into the community will have a positive impact in many ways, and it will go to a very many deserved recipients. I think there's no doubt of that across the community and across council. So my concern is there that we may be spending money in areas that we don't really need to do. As I said before, it's our job to do this, to distribute assistance where we think it's appropriate. And if we're not doing it right, we need to know. If we are doing it right, then there's no need to look any further. We're doing our job. The 2 points that were added, the assessment of an actual on-the-ground impact that the grant funding has had, it to me feels more of a pat on the back to say, yes, we've done a good job. And a determination of whether the objectives were achieved. Well, that is something that, you know, it may be, you know, somewhat relevant, but certainly not to the point where an audit was called just on the administrative process surrounding the grants. So, yeah, to that extent, you know, I have supported it. It has had unanimous support, and I'm extremely, you know, grateful for that. And as I say, it's our job to do this. It's our job to distribute these resources. It's also our job to make sure that we're doing it right. And anything that we can do to keep this a transparent process from this point on, I'd be in full support of. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll now put the vote, and I'll go through individually to each person. Deputy Mayor? So this is the motion. Yes, support. Thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Support.
Councillor McKenzie?
Support.
Councillor Soward?
Support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cox?
Support, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dawkins?
Support.
Councillor Dakin?
Support.
Councillor Spencer?
Support, Mayor.
Councillor Harris?
Support, Mayor.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you. Support, Mayor.
And I support it, so that's 11 of us. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for those present. Councillor Stosnicek can now come back into the room, or into the meeting. Not sure how we tell her that, is she? Yeah. I can't call her in, but...
Send a message.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're there now? Thank you.
I'm here.
Good. So we're going to 18.1, the proposed street name, Dollarite Drive, Kings Meadows. Is there a mover for that?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Councillor Spencer?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Councillor Cox, second. You wish to speak to it at all, Councillor Spencer?
Yeah, well, that name comes from Hard Rock, so when I looked into it, I thought that was a good name.
Good on you. Councillor Cox?
Makes me think of ACDC, Mayor. No, I support.
Any other councillor wish to speak?
That were exactly my thoughts as well. What a great name for a street or a drive.
So all those in favour, just say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Aye.
No one's against, so that is carried. Thank you. So we move on to 19.1, some budget amendments from the CEO's report. Someone happy to move that?
Mayor.
Councillor McKenzie.
Happy
Is there
to
a
move.
seconder?
Happy to second those, Mayor.
Councillor Finlay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie, wish to speak to it?
Look, I think that they're all fairly self-explanatory. The officers have done a good job in putting a report around each of the amendments that have been made. The only one I'm just a little unclear on, which I'm just wondering whether there could be a response, in relation to the car villa refurbishment. It's great that we've managed to extend the lifetime and don't need to do the refurbishment on it, but it's saying that the money's been transferred to the car villa ash placement area. Does that mean additional works are going to be done in that area, or is that a code that holds funds until such time as we're going to use them?
CEO?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm aware that we are doing works to increase our like we were running short in terms of the ash placement area, so there is works proposed to complete that. So that's where that money's going.
Yeah, perhaps the report should just be expanded to just reflect that.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor McKenzie?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Not hearing anything. Can I put it to the vote then? So all those in favour say aye.
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 Any against? Say no. No one's against, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you. 19.2, some full budget amendments.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Move Councillor McKenzie. Seconded.
Happy to second that, Councillor.
Councillor Harris? Did I get that right? Yep. Councillor McKenzie, wish to speak to it?
Again, these are our statutory responsibilities where there are funds that come in to the council during a particular year which haven't been budgeted for, to actually increase the budget to reflect those monies, and there's been some external grants of $85,000 that have come in, and there's also some decrease in council fund expenditure. And again, I think they're all adequately disclosed and noted in the documents that are there, noting that the COVID-19 budget amendments are probably due to come in at some stage as well, but that'll be probably a later process, and I imagine that'll be going through the audit committee before it comes to this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Nothing to add to that, thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against, say no. So that's carried unanimously by all councillors. We'll close the meeting. Thank you very much for your time.
Can Shane give me a call, please?
Thank you. Who was that?
Can Shane call me, please?
Shane, call.
Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council